Hello and welcome to this new blog post on Microsoft Syntex and Dynamics 365 document handling. So today we will have a look first at Microsoft Syntex. What is that? How can you use it? And what does it have to do with Dynamics 365? And once we know what that is, then we can have a look at some demo cases that I prepared before I close with a summary. So let's get started. First bullet point here, introduction to Microsoft Syntex. So what is Microsoft Syntex? If you search the Microsoft Syntex site, you will find this long definition and a lot of additional text. So it's basically a document processing management system that uses modern artificial intelligence, PowerPlatform, and SharePoint technologies. So I found 6 elements, starting from models, content assembly, content query, annotations, content compliance, and premium taxonomy services that are incorporated into Syntex. Now, okay, these are just buzzwords. Let's have a look at what's behind. So behind models is you extract information, typically with OCR tools that you might know from the Power Platform. Then we have content assembly, meaning that you can create templates to automatically generate new documents. Then document query, that's self-explanatory. You classify, group your data based on metadata that you extract. Then you can do things like comments, notes, collaborate with others with your documents and then without modifying them. And then of course, you can also tag documents so that you know once a new regulation or a compliance thing comes up that you know what documents might be affected. All of that can be found on this site that I linked you below. And in today's post, we will focus mainly on this element where we have a look at the model and then here at the search for documents. So the good news is if you want to try this, there's a free trial and that's what I'm using for this demo. So you can just apply this and it gives you an additional feature on top of your SharePoint. And if you want to know more about Syntex and want to get started, then I have 2 resources here for you. One is from Microsoft Learn, the other one is from the Microsoft Syntex side with some examples. Okay, but now let's get started with some demo cases. And the first one that I have is we start in Dynamics 365 with a sales order invoice. And if you follow my blog post, then what we will do is we will generate an electronic report. So the sales order invoice will be created as a report and be put it on SharePoint. That's basically what we did a couple of times in my previous blog posts. But now I have Microsoft Syntex there that helps me to analyze and classify and get some data out of these documents. And why is that? Well, because I want to have them shown as invoice attachments with some additional information. And how that works in Dynamics 365 with the Power Platform and with Syntex and SharePoint, that's something I want to show you next. Okay, I'm starting here in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center where I assigned this free trial license. That's the first step that you have to do. And then the next step is you have to set up something in the SharePoint Admin Center. And I have opened here the video. Let's play it from one of the documents that or the learning sources that I showed you before. So what you have to create is basically a new site, a so-called content center. That functionality will become available once you have the license assigned. Then you set up a site name, a primary administrator, and then you can basically just set up the site. Once you have done that, you will get a Syntex library or site or content center, whatever you call it, that looks like that. So if I click on that, you can see that's called Microsoft Syntex. I called it LA Syntex 100. And there you can create your usual document libraries. So in the past, we already had a look at electronic reporting and the output destinations and where you can put files to. And we always needed a document library. And that's what I created here. So these are things that I created. So you just come here and say, okay, I created a new document library. Yeah? And then it looks like this. So I have one here that's for sales order invoices, that's for free text invoices. And if you open that, you will find this kind of information. Yeah? Of course, not all, but I will explain you how we get to this. Yeah? Now let's go to Dynamics and see how we can make a linkage to this document library and then process an invoice. So I'm here in F&O, and the first thing that you want to do is in the organization administration module there is something called document type, and here I have a document type that is linked to SharePoint and to this SharePoint document library. Yeah? It's just the same setup that you are used to. Then of course, if you want to create invoices and send them to SharePoint, then you need this electronic reporting output destination. So I have here electronic reporting destination. Here is my sales order invoice. Yeah, and then you see here's Power BI. And actually here's my Syntex site. Yeah. So that's pretty standard. And the last thing that you need to do is in accounts receivable, in the form setup or for the individual customers that you have to make sure that this electronic report is set up here. So I have here the reporting format that I will use. So it's a sales order invoice, and I said, okay, to make it clear which invoice document I use, I put here LRE. Yeah? So that's it. Yeah? I did not make a change to the report. Actually, I just gave it a different name. Okay, then next thing is let's create a sales order and post the invoice. And well, most of you are familiar with this process. So if you feel this is too slow for you, yeah, just fast forward the video, or well, listen to the music. Might also be a good idea. So I'm using here a custom account, just entering the usual details, and then I say, okay, create this new sales order for me. And here we are. So now let's create some lines. I say, okay, I have a laptop. Maybe I sell 2 of them. And then maybe I have here this surfacing. And then we also sell 2. And then I have here, I think, wait a minute, cancel. One, I think that is coffee. Coffee is always good. Yeah. So also 2 for this stuff. Now let's save it, and I do not want to pick and pack and do all these things. What I want to do is I want to create invoices. Yeah. So let's directly jump to the invoice creation, and just see here that I'm using the print management destination. Yeah. And because I do not want to create one invoice but multiple, let's change here the numbers a bit and let's create 2. So I say, okay. Let's see what happens, and if everything is okay, then the first invoice that we create and post now should be visible on SharePoint in a second. Yeah? So if we are here, then we have a first invoice document, this one here. Yeah? This one should be on this SharePoint side now at the very bottom. So let's scroll down, and here you see a new line, this one here, where you see a strange number that's from the invent table, the invoice table, the rec ID that I used as my document name. And now you just see document, but all the others are still missing. All the other columns are not filled. Yeah? But while waiting until the other columns are filled, let's create the second invoice. So I come here, I say I want to create another invoice, and now we have here the remaining laptop that I want to post. And then we should see a second record on this document library. Yeah. So let's go back here to the document library, refresh it, and then at the very bottom we should see 2 lines here. Yeah. Okay, now the question is, how the hell did I get the other columns in? Yeah, like the customer name, invoice number, invoice date, and so on. Yeah? And well, the answer is by using this functionality here. And if you use the Power Platform and kind of extraction tools, then you might be familiar with what this is. Yeah, so you click on that, classify and extract. Oh, sorry, I should have done it this way. Then you see here is a model. Yeah, and if you open that, you see the columns that I want to read from the different documents, like customer ID, customer name, and so on. And I can say I want to manage this model. And then you basically get a guidance what to do. So you create the model, you train it, you publish it, and then it's applied. And here at the bottom you say to which libraries do you want to apply this model. But before you can do that, you have to have a couple of demo invoices. So 5 documents, that's what you need from before. And then you need to classify them. So basically tag them and say, okay, that's here a field called invoice number, then I have invoice date, and so forth and so on. And then let's go back, because that's what I did from the previous post. So here you see the first things, the information to extract. Yeah, and here you say, okay, I want to have a text field, I want to have other fields, and so on. Yeah? And what I did is I said a custom ID and so on. But then I also have here a field called search sales order lines for search. Yeah? Maybe you know that our document has a kind of table with different lines. I did not use this field, and I will explain you shortly in a minute why. Yeah? So let's go on. Then next thing is to create a collection, and here you put your sample documents. I put them already. Then you go next, and then you say, hey, what do you want to tag? Yeah, so you highlight this is the invoice number. Then we have here the date, and so on. And then here in the line section, and maybe let me go to the document that has a couple of lines. Here I said, hey, in this field that I call sales order lines for search, I do not want to have the individual fields from the lines. I want to see all, so I tag them all. Why? Because this makes it easier for me to search what was in the invoice. Of course you can make it differently, but I said that's okay for me. Then once you have tagged all, then you need to train the model, and once it's trained you can apply it to your document library. So let's go back, and if we refresh this site, hopefully the classification has already been made, at least for this document. So we see, okay, here is the customer number, here is the invoice number, here's the date, here's the amount, and yeah, here's the sales order ID, and whatever I selected. Yeah, so this will take a while until these documents are processed. But it's basically using Power Platform tools and techniques that you can apply to get the information out of the document. And now, second point here is, now imagine you have the documents here, but you're working in F&O. Then the question is, how do you create a link from these documents back to your application? So if I'm on the sales order, I directly want to see that. And if we go here on the sales order, and maybe use me an old one where I already have the documents processed. So this one, that's what I recorded for the German language blog post. So what I did is, I did not use this attachment. Why? Because making a linkage back to this document and fill it, that requires some adjustment to my knowledge, because we do not have a proper entity for that. So what did I do? Let's close that. I created an app that I called invoice attachment. Yeah? And also here I created a couple of invoices for the sales order. And what this app is doing is the following. We are here on this on this document or sales order 2591. It's identified here. And it can see, okay, we have two invoices, invoice 831 and 832. So let's quickly double check. Invoice document 831, 832. Very good. And then let's open it again. And once that is done, you can then do different things. So first, all of the columns that you see here, they come from the invoice document. So I said in my model, what information do I want to see? And then depending on the invoice that I have, I said, okay, show me the invoice document, and I can click here. This opens the first invoice, 832. So that's this one. Now if I click on the first line, it should open invoice 831 and so on. And then there's another thing, this button here. So just imagine customer says, hey, I have never received this invoice, I want to send it again. Then you just say, okay, here's your email, give me your email, and then you just click this button, and what happens is a flow will be triggered and send out the invoice. So currently we stand here at 51 emails, so in a second there should be 52. Once the flow is processing and then giving us the invoice document. So here you can see I have a standard text, and here's the invoice attachment of the invoice. Now the question is, of course, how did that all work, and how did I create this Power App? Well, first thing is, if we close that, then I came here and said I want to create an app or add an app, and to know what kind of invoice or sales order I need to filter for, I needed this information. So I needed a sales order number. What did I do? I opened that input context, and I said, okay, here under S, hopefully we find it, sales order. I said here the sales order sales ID. That's the information that I will need in the app. So I say cancel. Then I created my app, and it's this one. So let's have a look at how I designed this. The first field, of course, is the one that holds the sales order number or sales order ID. Let's wait until it opens. And if it's too slow for you, as I said, feel free to fast forward here, or if you're familiar with these things. So here in this field, I have here a text field that holds the parameter entity ID. Where did I get this parameter from? Well, if you look in Microsoft Learn, there is short information about this onStart element that you need to put. So basically, if you say, okay, onStart, and then you come here into this field and say entity, then it automatically takes the sales order ID of the sales order where you are located. And then I have here a data table. This data table is basically my Syntex library. So what did I do here? Well, I said, okay, here take this document library, and I like a data table. So I said, okay, put it in the data table, and then filter it, the sales order. So this field should be identical to the sales order ID on Syntex. So if you have 5 invoices, you will see 5 invoices here for this specific sales order. If you have 1 invoice, you see only 1. And then, of course, you see here all the fields, but there's one column that I did not show because it's not visible. That's the link to item. And this link to item, this is the field that I showed in this gray column or in this gray box. Actually, it's something you can hide, but it says, okay, from the selected row in the data table, select this link to item. And once you have this information, then I said, okay, here's a button, launch this link to item, the text. Pretty easy. You click on the button, the document opens. The other thing here is I have a button that sends out the invoice. How does it work? Well, it's a flow behind. And what does the flow take? It takes the invoice number. So I say, okay, in the row that you selected, there is an invoice number. Then take the email that you entered here. And that's what you need to run the flow. So let's have a look at the flow. And we scroll up. It starts here with the invoice number and email. And then I have here a variable called SharePoint name. I call it like that. Then I filter here for the invoice number. So basically I'm going to this document library and search for this specific invoice number. And because here it says get files, I get multiple, actually just one element. It is in this apply to each. I hold the element and then I set the variable to the output here, the name of the SharePoint element. Why do I do that? Well, because then in the next step I need the file content. So I said in this Syntex library, take this element and search for it. And once you have that, please take the file content, put it here as a body, and the invoice number, put it here with PDF, so that the customer or your colleague or whoever wants to have a copy of the invoice can get a copy with the PDF attached. So it's pretty simple. This one to open it, this one to send the invoice document. And that's something you can easily include here. And then depending on which invoice you stand, maybe let's use this one. Don't know if I have one or many. Then there's always a filter applied. 2586 is here the sales order number. This should be filtered then. And then you see the invoices that are related to this specific sales order. Okay, so that was the first part. Now let's go back to my PowerPoint to explain you what I will do in addition to extend what I just showed you. Okay, so after this first demo, I thought, well, that's pretty nice with this document attachment in the Power App. But what happens if the customer calls? And maybe the customer does not know the sales order number. Maybe he just knows his name and maybe some items that he wants or that he orders. Now the question is, how can you quickly find the correct sales order, the correct invoice for this customer and maybe resend it? And that's something that I want to show you in the next demo for an extended version of the Power App that I showed you before. So let's check it out. Okay, so we are back here where we stopped. And now the scenario is a bit different because now I'm not at the sales order. I want to go to my customer, and maybe let's use this one because this one has many invoices. And yeah, just imagine the customer calls and asks, hey, what's going on with my invoice document or with the items, or there's something wrong. And now you need to quickly find something. And what I did is, again, here you see there's no attachment. But I extended and modified the previous app basically. And now we filter here for the customer. So here you see the customer. Here is the document side, the SharePoint Syntex side with my invoices for these customers. It can be many. And now what I want to do is, okay, let's say the customer tells you, okay, I know the sales order ID, it's 2588. Then you see what you type here will be filtered. Or you say, well, maybe I just know the item. Let's say, okay, I know there was some coffee inside and the coffee is called Brazil. Then you get invoices here where you have this term inside this search box. So basically, with this kind of search, you are more flexible in what you want to filter for, especially if the customer does not know details. Of course, you can also search for invoice number and so on if the customer tells you, depending on how you configure this field. And then the other things here, open the selected invoice and then send it. That's the same as in the previous app. So let's have a quick look at how I configured this second app that is more in orange color. Let's go to Power Apps. So if we close the first one, I want to leave that. And then I have here the customer sales order invoices. And well, it's mainly a copy of the app that I showed you before, except for this search field. And if you have no clue how to get such a search field, and especially with the expressions that I use later, then just use a sample SharePoint list or something and create a default app for that. Let Power Apps automatically create you an app, and then you will see how the filters can be applied. Yeah. So what I did here is I added this field. I call it search box, and then in the data table here I applied this filter. So I said, okay, search and filter this document library, and then use the sales order line. So this element that holds the item name, item number, and so on. Also search in the invoice number. So if you know the invoice number, or if you know the sales order ID, these are my search fields. So this, and these are my search fields. And depending on the information that the customer gives you, you enter something here and you get a filtered result. Yeah, so that's basically all that I changed here. And then the only thing I did was, again, I added the app here. And this time, of course, I filtered here for the customer information, for the account number, that is then passed over here into this field and then can be used as a search criteria for the invoices that I have. So that's all what I wanted to share with you here. Let's go back to my PowerPoint for some closing remarks. Okay, so here's a short summary. Well, what did we see? Well, we saw how Microsoft Syntex, SharePoint, PowerPlatform, and Dynamics 365 work together in a very easy no-code way for handling documents. So even if you're not a developer, you can easily do that and realize that. And in addition to handling documents, it also might have an advantage for you, because if compared to storing documents inside of F&O as an attachment, it might be smarter to save it outside, for example on SharePoint or somewhere else. Why? Because the storage outside might be cheaper than the one that you have in F&O. Yeah? So that might be a second thing you might want to take into consideration when building something similar. Okay, but that's all what I wanted to share today with you. I hope you found it interesting and can maybe use it. So thanks a lot for watching and listening, and then till next time.